The Buffalo Bills 2024 schedule is released, and we are going to break it all down for you here on Circling the Wagons.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Pro Football Hall of Famer and former Buffalo Bill Andre Reed. You're listening to Nate and the Fellas on Circle the Wagons podcast. Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. Go Bills.
Where else would you rather be than right here, right now?
Hey, hey, let's go Buffalo. Hey, hey, let's go Buffalo.
The Bills make me wanna shout.
Welcome to the Circling the Wagons podcast, a podcast discussing the Bills all year round with interviews, news, recaps, and insightful fan discussion. Most times. Here's your host and lifelong Bills fan, Nate.
Hey, Bills Mafia. Welcome to another episode of Circling the Wagons, a Buffalo Bills fan podcast. I am your host, Nate, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. We are going to discuss the Bills 2024 schedule as it was released tonight. We're going to talk about the things that we like, the things that we don't like. We're going to break it all down for you guys. But yeah, I'm joined right now by my co-host, John. And John, now we knew who they were playing, but we didn't know exactly when we were gonna play them. So, what are your thoughts right now? How are you doing, man?
Doing great. My initial reaction, because I mean, obviously we've been getting leaks throughout the day and the week, and so it's been hard to not know ahead of time. And as soon as 8 o'clock hit, the Bills posted it anyway, which is great because I don't have any of the stations that can watch that are hosting it. But my first reaction was a lot of primetime games early. The San Francisco one's late, but a lot of primetime games early, which I don't like primetime games because I'm old. But there are 7 1 o'clock games, which is very nice too. So I'm happy about that. But yeah, I mean, aside from that, the only things that I noticed was Arizona was an interesting start to the season. It sounded like it was either going to be them or like Tennessee, possibly Jacksonville, but no, that's fine. And then, aside from their early primetime games, they have 3 road games in a row early on: Baltimore, Houston, and the Jets. And then you have I guess you could say 4 out of 5 because Tennessee at home, and then they're across the country in Seattle. So that might be a rough stretch just from an away standpoint. And then later in the season, they have Kansas City and then bye week San Francisco. Those are both home games, but they're both against conference championship teams, so that will be good viewing as well. I think it's good. I don't see anything crazy. They play New England the last week and the third to last week. I kind of was hoping that New England would be the first game, only because rookie quarterback, rookie coach, and all that. But I'm not that, like, they don't have a supporting cast yet, so I'm not too worried about them anyway. So
exactly,
no, I
think coach and everything too.
Yeah, all in all, I mean, they get the whole Miami game is early November, so weather's not going to be a factor. But the fans will be. So yeah, I mean, overall, I think it looks pretty good. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm glad. 5 primetime games seems like not that many compared to what we normally get. I think we had like 6 last year, right? So, I'm with you, old guy. Like, I love my 1 o'clock games now than, even the 4 o'clock games. I know last year it was like after Thanksgiving, or was it Halloween or Halloween, something ridiculous. I think it was Thanksgiving, where like there wasn't a 1 o'clock game after that point until the new year, like until January. I want to say it was like the beginning of November or something like that. And this year, like, it's kind of similar because there's not a 1 o'clock game from November 10th until December 22nd because the bye week, but at least they ended with it. So, just talking about times for games, I like them opening up, going to the West Coast to start with, as opposed to right in the middle of the season. It does stink though that they have to, they only have a short week up until, the week 2 game against the Dolphins. But it's
first week's a home game.
Oh, I'm sorry. The first week's a home game. Okay. You're right. I was kind of hoping that they would start at the West Coast and then come back, but it is nice that they don't have to travel that way. But yeah, I like the Thursday night game I've been mentioning this all over social media. I like the Thursday night game being in Miami in September, in the beginning of September, basically, when it's at night and not in the 100-degree unshaded sidelines of Hard Rock Stadium. So I'm a fan of that. And then we get them. We don't even face them really in the cold in November. That's nothing. So when they come to Buffalo, it's not that big of a deal. So, I mean, what would you say, just looking at this schedule, like what's the toughest stretch of games? Because the Bills have, based on, I always go by Warren Sharp's strength of schedule, because it's based on the Vegas forecasted win totals. So if you go based on that, the Bills have like the 10th hardest schedule in the NFL, just based on their opponents' like predicted win percentage. So, I mean, just looking at like, who they have to play, I mean, what would you say is the roughest 3 or 4 game stretch? Because there's a lot of tough games in here. I would say that there's, just looking at the opponents, even before we started this, like there's only like 4 or 5 games where I'm like, that'll probably go our way,
Yeah, that's really tough to predict, because every year there's teams that end up being way better than you would think and way worse than you would think, and then you always lose to a team that you shouldn't have, and that, like, there's all those things. I think with the combination of the primetime games early on with overlapping a stretch of 3 straight away games, that might be the toughest. They got at Baltimore, at Houston, at the Jets, and 2 of those are primetime games, and then 2 games before that are also primetime games. So that will be interesting, but also kind of gets that out of the way early. And then later on, you have Kansas City bye week, which is nice, and then San Francisco, and Kansas City and San Francisco are both at home, which is nice. Mm-hmm. And then they're at Rams, at Detroit. So that could be obviously playoff implications when we get to that point. And they have 3 AFC East teams: New England, Jets, New England. Oh, by the way, speaking of AFC East, I heard a fun stat the other day. The Colts have had more AFC East titles than the Jets.
Yes. Yeah. I was so happy when you texted that to us. That was an amazing tweet. How many, like the Colts have like 5 and the Jets still only have like 2 or 3, right?
Yeah, it was 6 for the Colts and 2 for the Jets. And the Colts haven't been in the division in like 20 something years, right?
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, the Bills have, I don't know, they're like right behind the Dolphins, as I think is having.
The Bills can pass the Dolphins within the next several years, I think, if they keep doing what they're doing. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I like that stretch too, John, just because it's the beginning of the season. We have like, hopefully, Joe Brady's taking his new playbook into account, but you know how it is. Like, it's kind of rough the first few weeks, trying to get their footing. Also with the defense, having new coaching. I mean, that's when it's really, everything's not really gelled at that point. You know what I mean? Like new systems, new everything. So I would say for that reason, and like you said, like, that's a good reason. But then also, like, I think the stretch that's going to be really tough is the Chiefs, 49ers, Rams, and Lions, just from the standpoint of like good teams, right? But luckily there's a bye week in between there, like
2 home games. And like the 2 hardest games are the home games, right?
Yes,
Chiefs,
luckily.
49ers.
Yeah. Chiefs and 49ers are, and luckily it's split by a bye week. So I don't hate the schedule at all because, just looking, I'm glad we're starting with the Cardinals. I don't think the Cardinals are going to be great. I think that they could potentially beat the Bills, don't get me wrong, but I don't think that they do. I think they're a decent team, and they're coming here to,
Yeah, they got Marvin Harrison Jr. now, so that's a big thing.
So I was saying that, Mike, let me know what you think about this. I was saying, what do you think is the tougher part of the schedule for the Bills looking at it? So, the first game you have at home against the Cardinals, and then on a short week, very early. If there was a time to have a short week, I feel like it's earlier in the season, right? Like when people are still kind of healthy, because the further you go into the season, the more banged up you are, the more you really need that week. So like if there is a time to like come in, like have that short week, I feel like it's right. But anyway, but but John brought up a good point. Like having that, like the really tough part of the schedule is like, the Dolphins, the Jaguars, the Ravens, and Texans, that 4-game stretch, because those are all pretty good teams. They're all playoff teams, and 3 of those are away, and 3 of those are primetime. So like that's a really tough schedule, and it's really tough to like. So we might be looking at the schedule. Obviously we want to see them go 17-0. But like if there was a tougher part of the schedule for like, earlier in the season when the coaching staff isn't really, meshing yet because we got a new offensive coordinator, a new defensive coordinator. But then I was looking at like the teams that could be the best this year just because I think they're better teams. So the Chiefs in week 11, the bye week, and then the 49ers in week 13, the Rams in week 14, and the Lions in week 15. So like I thought that 4-game stretch was the toughest, just based on their opponent. What do you think? What do you think's the tougher part?
Yeah, I think anytime you have Kansas City and San Francisco and Detroit, I think that's much harder.
The Rams aren't terrible. I think they could be good this year, but like that's an away game, West Coast, and then they have another away game there. But John brought up a good point too. There's 3 straight away games if you include the Jets game after his stretch. So that's gonna be a tough. I mean that 5-game stretch, 4 of those are away and 4 of those are prime time. I feel like Allen, for the most part, though, plays better in prime time, don't you? Like it wasn't the case when he was in his first year or two, but I think he actually shines on prime time more often than not.
Yeah, I think Allen in general plays better than most players in the NFL.
I don't disagree. Dude, how much are you looking forward to that Texans game? I thought for sure that they were going to schedule that Texans-Bills game week 1. Like just the Diggs, the Allen thing, I don't know. I felt like it was going to be that week. Obviously, it didn't turn out that way. It's a week 5 game for the Texans, but
I'm more worried about Stroud than I am about Diggs. Diggs is probably going to be the 3rd receiver after Nico Collins and Tank Dell.
Dude, well, I'll tell you what. You could be very right with those statements that he could be the 3rd wide receiver. Whatever his prop is that week, I'm betting the over on Diggs because that revenge factor is huge. I think if his over under is 29 yards or if it's 89 yards, I'm betting the over because revenge game is a super real thing. But other than that, I mean, it's an away game. It's in Houston. I don't know. I'm not too worried about that game in general. I think the Bills. I think McDermott can scheme around a 2nd-year quarterback, and plus, we'll have a whole year of tape on him.
I'm worried about it only because of Stroud, and I don't agree with the bets with Diggs.
You don't agree with betting the over on a revenge game?
Not necessarily. A lot's going to depend on how the Bills secondary shapes up over the first few weeks, but I think he's already lost a step. He clearly did with Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going for the number 1 receiver on a team to the number 3 receiver on a team.
Yeah, but how guys...
It depends what that yardage is. You said 29 or 89. Like, that's like way too big of a swing. 29, yeah, sure. But 89, I'm not.
Yeah, well, we'll see. But guys step it up in their first year back with a new team, just like Diggs did with his first year with Buffalo. I mean, he was on fire.
I get it. Diggs has a great work ethic and all that, but he's not why I'm worried about Houston. I'm worried about Houston because they're becoming a better team overall, and they have been a better team overall in the AFC.
Yeah. Mike, any thoughts? 5 primetime games? You're a fan of the 1:00 games now, aren't you?
I like the prime time.
Like the prime time? See,
it just seems like much more of an event, more anticipation. I mean, primetime games, like a lot of things in life, New Year's, it's another good example. Just a lot of hype and then just total letdown.
Just like primetime games.
No, I feel like the Bills,
the
they actually live up to the hype.
Yeah. We wanted this for so long for them to have all these primetime games.
Remember but now we're older, and I don't like staying up late anymore.
It's never on a weekend. They don't do primetime games. Are always on a week or work night, or that work the next day for us at least.
Yeah, and like what was like the 3rd week? It was like at 7:30, so it wasn't like all the way.
Oh, that could be better.
All the way late night. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so you couldn't putting the kids to bed for the first half, and then yeah.
Your daughter's
Not
like,
ideal.
read to me, Daddy, and you're like, no, quit. Josh Allen has the ball right now. Just read to yourself for a few minutes until commercial break.
Yeah, exactly. Like, why did they put that time slot? Like 1 o'clock. That's my favorite time slot.
Yeah,
Let's go back to the drought. Let's go.
Dude, this is the perfect. If you're older like us, this is the perfect time schedule if you live on the West Coast, because they have 5 primetime games and then they have 1, 2, 3, 4 4:00 games. So I mean, geez, they only have, just thinking about it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 definite 1 o'clock games. That's it. Kind of crazy.
Well, I'll take 6 or 7 1 o'clock games, but think about the Bills fans in Europe where there's a late game and now you add 6 hours, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's terrible.
That's tough. Those are the real ones right there. Shout out to all the European listeners out there. If you guys are staying up for it, which I can't believe. What would you do if you had to stay up? Like, let's say, I think those games are like 7 hours ahead, right? So like if it's an 8 o'clock game, you're talking 3 a.m. is when the game starts. Would you just like go to bed at like 5 p.m. the night before and then just get up and watch it right before work? Or
you'd have to do that.
Because you wouldn't stay up that whole. You couldn't just go on no sleep.
No.
I want to hear from our European listeners. What do you guys do to watch the game? Or do you just like wake up at 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. when you normally do, and then just like watch the game straight through with like no commercials or something like that? Like the condensed version of the game on NFL Plus or something. I'm curious.
Maybe it's easier in Europe to like not like see the result and like watch it later or something. That might be an option. I don't know. Like, let us know if I don't know how big it is over there. So,
speaking of
that would be interesting to know.
Yeah, speaking of things that we got wrong, from our European listeners, I was asking. We mentioned the Bills' 7th round pick, which is Travis Clayton out of England. Remember the Australian football player? I said,
yeah.
You were just like, oh, it's the same thing as rugby. I'm like, yeah, it probably is. I had 2 European Australian listeners say it absolutely is not. They said rugby you can tackle. They're like that. They were offended by it, right? No,
wrong.
Dude, they were so offended by what you said that no.
Well, I apologize.
No. You can't have a differing opinion ever. No, they were totally cool about this. Like,
well, if it is wrong, it's wrong. Then, like, I admit that.
They said Aussie rules football. So rugby you can tackle. Aussie rules you don't really tackle.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, You're right.
Aussie rules can be difficult.
I wasn't thinking when I said that then. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that was from Jason.
Yeah. I was just saying things. Yeah, you're right.
Let's see. All entirely separate games, rules, stadium, styles of play. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't.
I generalize it too much. 2 different things.
You're like, it's basically like cricket, right? Like Australian football, it's basically cricket. That's about all I know over there. It's just all
terrible. That was terrible. Yeah.
Cool. So I mean, we're not going to do a schedule prediction right now because it's too early.
No, let's go.
Which one would you? No,
Arizona.
I don't want.
Arizona. Okay, that's a win.
John,
Miami's a win, obviously.
Let's talk about something more fun for now, because we could do this. We'll do this before the season when we have an idea of what we think about the team. But like, if you were to travel,
I got a pretty good idea
for one of these away games, which one would you travel to? Okay. I don't love these away games, to be 100% honest. Like there's not a lot of good places to visit, but then if I think about it, like there's probably only 9 or 10 cities that I'd really want to visit in general outside the division. So
I would like to go to the Vegas.
The Vegas one, yeah, they're not playing Vegas this year, but yeah, that would be a fun game to go to.
When will they play Vegas next?
That's an excellent question.
Let's set up a trip right here tonight.
What's funny is they could be playing Vegas next year, but like not be going to Vegas. They could be in Buffalo. In 2025, the Bills are playing only one team in the AFC West because they have the AFC North next year. So unless Vegas, has the same finish as the Bills. So let's see, 2026.
What about Houston? Week 5, 1 o'clock game.
Houston would be fun. I've never been to Houston.
Yeah.
That would be Vegas.
I've never been to Texas, so that'd be cool.
Yeah, me either. Yeah, same. Texas. I like that or Dallas. Like those would be interesting. Like because I don't have any interest in going to Miami necessarily. I've been there before. I've never been to Baltimore. I think I've been to Baltimore, but like it's not like a destination.
I've been to
city.
Baltimore, but it's not. Yeah.
Yeah, Seattle could be fun. I've always wanted to try Seattle. I've never been to the like Pacific
Seattle
Northwest.
could be interesting. It is close, but I mean, they have Los Angeles. I don't know. I would vote Houston if I were just to like pick a random place I could go and watch the game. Probably.
I think Nate went to get food.
Okay.
And for Dapper Dan,
I thought the dog wanted to go out. She just wanted to come downstairs. She just wanted to come see Mike in my basement. Yeah, Detroit.
Dapper Dan agrees. Houston. So that's 2 votes for Houston.
Houston, Seattle, or L.A. Houston, Seattle, or L.A. I mean, I've never been to Seattle. I've never been to the Pacific Northwest. Have either of you been to Seattle?
No.
Like that sounds fun, but like then again, I think it's like the home of grunge, and like it was a home of grunge because like it wasn't a great place to live. It's always kind of like not dapper, like to be there. So
I think you're starting to sell me on Seattle because I love the grunge era.
That's like if John could go back in time to one era, and it's an era that you actually lived through, but that would be it, right? Grunge, Seattle, 1990. Could you imagine going to like basement? Like bands, like you might see Pearl Jam playing there, or Alice in Chains, or something like that. Temple of the Dog, Pearl Jam, Nirvana.
Isn't it weird that Seattle was in the NFC?
Why is that weird that it's in the NFC? Because it used to be in the AFC, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
For a long time, it was in the AFC, not in the NFC.
That is kind of weird. It's kind of weird. Indy, I have no interest in going to Indianapolis. I mean, it's not a bad city. I just like, I'm not like, oh man, you got to see that thing there, or go to that place there, you know. LA I've been to just briefly, and like I mean I'd go again. Detroit is Detroit, like, you know, I've driven through there, but
well, what are home games? Like if you're like home games, there's a bunch. Don't include the AFC East if you had to pick a non-AFC East game.
Just to see?
Just to go to.
Just to go to that wasn't KC, because KC is obviously the answer, right?
You're picking between 49ers too. Yeah, Jacksonville 3rd week of the season.
Mm-hmm. Mike, which one would you do? KC, San Francisco? Which home game do you like in that list? They're the lighter blue ones.
San Francisco, just because it's primetime.
Oh, that's true. That is nice as primetime. I think the Chiefs still, but if I had to give one that wasn't the Chiefs, the Jaguars would be a fun one to go to. It's prime time, you know, show off, you know, Trevor Lawrence. You know, Gabe Davis is going to be back. Revenge game for Gabe Davis and Mitch Morse back in Buffalo. I think I hope the Bills fans give them like a round of applause. I think Mitch Morse is for sure, but I wonder about Gabe Davis. I'd like to think so.
Either way.
Cool. We'll have to do record predictions another time, but any other thoughts on the schedule before we call this one tonight?
No, I think they'll go undefeated, so I'm not too worried.
Yeah, that's John. Mike. Mike, do you have any other thoughts for this one?
Dolphins, second place in the AFC East.
Dolphins or Jets?
Yeah, it'll be interesting with Aaron Rodgers back.
I feel like they made a lot of concessions to make this year better for him. Like drafted a lot more players around him. They signed who else? Who did they get? John from a wide receiver.
I don't remember.
It was Mike Williams, right?
Yeah, Mike Williams is a bigger one.
And they still have Garrett Wilson.
But it's the Jets. They could overtake Miami. They could. Zach Wilson is gone.
Dude, how excited are you to see that? Who's the latest quarterback that just got paid a bunch of money? Goff. See Goff's contract and realizing that Tua is going to demand as much as that, which was like 4 years, like $55 million or something like that. And like 170 of it out of the 220 was like guaranteed. It's like,
Tua can't beat the Bills.
I mean,
he's 12-6 against the AFC East and 0-6 against the Bills.
That's awesome. He's won every other game against the AFC East except against the Bills.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he won one game against the Bills. Remember 2 years ago?
Maybe it's based on starts or something. Maybe you didn't start the game. But that's what's going all over Twitter right now is that Tua is 12-6 against the AFC East, but 0-6 against Buffalo.
Mm-hmm. Well, at least you fact checked it.
Yeah, there's probably a technicality there if he like won a game somewhere, but
Yeah.
that's what's been going around.
He definitely started that game where he beat us. So that's weird.
Or maybe I don't know. That's what I've been seeing.
Yeah.
And nobody's disputing it, so
I'm going to dispute it right now just to disagree with people, just to make it angry. So, cool.
Another thing I want to talk about is
Where was that?
Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we
Dude
didn't talk
just
about...
keeps trading up.
So I think that's
Rodgers,
interesting. That's a good point. I like it.
Mahomes to Allen.
So they've got MVS. They signed Chase Claypool. They got KJ Hamler earlier. They're just gonna whoever the best guy is for that X position, they're gonna plug and play just like they did for Emmanuel Sanders or John Brown.
They are just collecting wide receiver threes, man.
The best guy, yeah. Whoever's gonna fit that role is gonna be it. And then you got Keon Coleman, and then your slot is gonna be a combination of Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir. Or maybe Shakir could compete for the outside spot too. But
I like when they don't have a good answer, so they just platoon a position with a bunch of different guys and just hope one of them sticks.
I like that.
But that's
how they got Daquan Jones. They threw 5 defensive tackles, and they're like, well, one of these guys might be halfway decent, and he was.
And it's worked before at receiver too. Like they've just like Sanders and Brown, they've had guys that were only there for a year or two that filled that role, and they were good. So
I think with Sanders and Brown, they expected a little bit more out of those guys than they do Chase Claypool. But Marquez Valdez-Scantling, he's like 6'4". I mean,
they got like 3 or 4. They got 3 or 4 guys to compete at that position, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just him.
Yeah, it's good depth. I mean, a lot of these guys are you'd have to assume at this point Valdez-Scantling is going to make the team if you were to pick the top 6 wide receivers, right? I mean, he has more pedigree than Claypool, Hamler, or what is it? KJ Hamler, Chase Claypool, Quintus Cephas. I mean, he's a better receiver than all this at this point.
Yeah, I would say
Matt Collins makes a team because they went out and got him on purpose.
Yeah, but like MVS's contract is almost identical to Hollins. I'd put him with Hollins right now.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Okay, that's fair.
But with Valdez-Scantling, isn't it so incentive laden? So it's like if he makes all his money, like the Bills make out like bandits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like he either gets $1 million or $4 million. It's not even
perfect.
Yeah, it's not even a big
do
difference.
All contracts like that.
Yeah. And from a wide receiver perspective, he'll probably be 4th in targets behind Coleman, Shakir, Samuel, and Kincaid. I said receiver, but Kincaid too.
Did you say Valdez-Scantling keeps trading up? Who did he play for before? Rodgers. He went from Rodgers to Mahomes to Allen. Yeah.
It's like just dating hotter and hotter people.
Yeah, Allen's the
like
best.
Pete Holmes, or not Pete Holmes, Pete Davidson. just keep falling up. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is the Pete Davidson of wide receivers. Devontae Adams is like the opposite. He keeps going to shittier and shittier quarterbacks.
Actually, that's a good example of Adams. Like a lot of receivers and running backs who are seeking bigger deals end up going to lesser teams and not producing as much.
Almost always.
Is that a fair statement?
Almost always, right? Like how often do you ever see wide receivers go to a different team and put up numbers like Tyreek Hill did with, the Dolphins? It's very rare. I feel like look at Allen Robinson. I'm just trying to think of recent.
Randy Moss.
Oh, Randy Moss was terrible for those years that he was in Oakland, right?
I meant when he got with Brady.
Oh, when he got with Brady, he was good again.
Yeah. But in general, you might not think of as many because you don't hear about them because they've fallen off the face of the earth. But like a lot of like good receivers or running backs, especially running backs, I feel, with their second team, with that first like big contract of the rookie year, like fall off. They go to like a lesser team.
Mm-hmm.
Jordy Nelson.
Look at Miles Sanders. Like he goes to Carolina, way lesser team than Philly, and yards per carry terrible. Everything's terrible. Efficiency's terrible.
Isn't this true with everything though? It's like the crappy team needs to make a splash, so they
pay more, but
pay more.
Then you end up doing. Remember Le'Veon Bell? He should have just.
He held out for like a whole year, right?
Missed a year of making money, and
yeah, it's not. This isn't the 70s and 80s for running backs. Running backs they got the raw deal in this day and age. They can't take those risks.
Did you say Jordy Nelson?
Yeah.
Did Jordy Nelson leave the Packers?
Yeah.
Where'd he go? I don't remember that.
Raiders.
Oh yeah, he was. Yeah,
and just completely fell off the cliff and then retired.
But from being a top 10 wide receiver to nothing.
Year in and year out.
Just goes to show you that the quarterback is so important.
It's everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
Why would you? So, like, if you're a wide receiver, instead of taking the big payday for like an extra $2 million a year, let's say, like stay with like save $2 million a year, or like, you know, take $2 million less a year for like a 4-year contract, but then like you stay with that team even longer for the next contract instead of like just retiring, just your career ending, you know.
And your stock is so much higher. Endorsements. It sounded like I was going to say something else, but I wasn't. It's just endorsement.
Public perception. That doesn't mean shit, you know. And then there's the endorsements.
Yeah.
You sound like the underwear elves in like South Park. It's like step one.
Well, I can kind of see it both ways, because if you look at prior to 1994, which was the advent in free agency, you have guys that stayed on the team for forever, and if they had a good team, they were recognized for it. But if they were on a bad team, then they kind of got screwed. So there is probably examples that we're not thinking of that were on bad teams that went to good teams afterwards, but it's not as prevalent as the other way around.
Nate and I don't consider pre-1994. We don't really remember that time.
I mean, yeah, I'm struggling to remember 2004.
The best Bills years ever in the early 90s. Yeah, we'll forget about that. That's cool. But anyway,
I didn't forget about it, but man, it's hard to remember. You're talking 30 years ago, John.
Feels like it was just yesterday.
I'm trying to live in the moment too. As much as I love that time as a kid, like.
Doesn't it scare you that like
everything's amazing when you're a kid? Isn't that like that Bill Burr skit? Like everything's like you can't appreciate dogs when you're a kid because you don't have bills, you don't have a mortgage, you don't have like all these other things that like you don't have a responsibility, you don't have a full-time job, you know. Then when you get older, you know, you can appreciate things a little bit more. So, Josh Brown says any Monday night game is my least favorite part. I put it up on Twitter. You know, Mafia Members Pod wrote, I like ending with New England, New Jersey, New England, New York Jets, New England. I think it's a great time to have a bye, especially when it's KC before and San Francisco after. There's not much I don't like about it, to be honest. Big Mike said the same thing. Bogey McBurdy said favorite, the 2 games in the final 3 weeks against New England. Least favorite, 2 games in the final 3 weeks against New England. I wonder why. I don't mind that. I don't mind playing New England twice. I mean, they're with a new coaching staff. Everything's new quarterback, rookie quarterback. That doesn't scare me yet until he proves himself, you know? All right. Well, thank you guys all for listening. Appreciate you guys listening to this schedule release episode. All right. Well, signing off for John.
Go Bills.
And for Mike.
Go Bills.
And for me, Nate, go Bills. And we'll talk to you guys all again soon.
We're all fired up.
Thank you for listening to the Circling the Wagons podcast. Download and subscribe to us in your favorite podcast service. Email us at ctwpod@gmail.com. That's Charlie Tango Whiskey Pod @gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at CTWPod. And most importantly, go Bills!
Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills, Nate.
Well, listen, the whole show is called Circling the Wagons. Say no more. I love it.